Okay, welcome everybody to Monster Monday. My name is DM Gallibond, and this is Monster Monday for November 22nd, 2021. And tonight, we are looking at an interesting creature. And just like last week, we're looking at this creature because of a particular aspect of the creature. And we're going to be examining the history of other creatures that are similar to it throughout the various editions of D&D. And that is the Screaming Devilkin. And so this is a creature that comes to us in 5e out of Mordenkainen's Fiendish Folio. And Volume 1, I should say. I don't think they've published Volume 2 yet, but... and maybe it's one of those things like where that's kind of the joke is that there's only one volume. But anyway, we are going to go ahead and have a look at that. As always, our music comes to us from Sirenscape. This is a track called Musicians Play for Mead from the Soundset Friendly Tavern. Okay, so the Screaming Devilkin. This monster in official sources does not appear, or at least in the official sources that I own, does not appear before 5th edition. So it seems like something that probably would have been around in other editions, but I'm guessing that it came from specific adventures or modules or things like that that perhaps I do not own. But the Screaming Devilkin is a ferocious small monster. They're bizarre fey creatures spawned by overwhelming moments of panic. And that right there, that is the key as to why they are here. We are looking at creatures that are spawned by intense or overwhelming emotions of one kind or another. And we're going to look and see how those have been created and used in D&D throughout the various editions. And then we'll be imagining like some ways we might create some monsters of our own that would also come from this type of thing. Alright, so that is the monster, and of course the only description we have is 5e because it did not appear in, at least in the sources that I have, in previous editions. Alright, so now, something about the lore of the Devilkin. Sages believe that their appearance derives from the primal fear inspired by fiendish creatures, while certain bards assert that panic, being such a repulsive emotion, is embodied by an equally ugly creature. So, kind of, because these are creatures born of panic, Screaming Devilkins love to spread fear and confusion across the world from where they spawned. And despite the fact that they are evil monsters, the Screaming Devilkins rarely attack to kill, and they much prefer to leave their victims badly injured and shorn of all hope. And for that reason, they are not always found on their own. They are sometimes found in the areas where other more powerful, more deadly monsters may be located. So that is something to keep in mind as well. When we'll talk about that when it comes to placement of these in the campaign. Alright, now despite their name, these are not fiendish creatures. They are in fact fey, and as we'll see when we talk about them in a little more depth when we look at their origins in the sourcebook material, they originate in the Feywild. And so because of that, they have the creature type of fey. And all fey are magical creatures closely tied to the forces of nature. They dwell in twilight groves and misty forests. In some worlds, they are closely tied to the Feywild, also called the Plane of Fairy. Some are also found in the outer planes, particularly the planes of Arborea and the Beastlands. And some Fey monsters include Dryad, Pixies, and Satyrs, and of course, Screaming Devilkin. Alright, now, this is where it gets interesting, because as I said, the first appearance I could find in any edition of the Screaming Devilkin was 5th edition. So, in going back and looking, I started to look for other monsters that are spontaneously created from moments of extreme emotion on the part of a person or a group of people. All right, and the first example of that I was actually a little surprised there weren't more, because in my mind, I think I recall that quite a few monsters spring forth from, spontaneous emotion of people. But when you actually go through and you start looking for those key terms and looking for the key descriptions, there's not a whole lot of monsters that actually have that in their, in their descriptive text. So either I am mixing up monsters that spread various emotions by just their very presence, or they have that as some sort of a supernatural or magical ability, or I am remembering correctly that there are more monsters, but just the way their description is written, I just somehow was missing it when I was filtering for trying to find monsters that would fit into this category. Alright, so the first one that I could find is 2nd edition, the Feyr. Feyr, and it says that they are pronounced Feyrs. And they're created from the remnants of ordinary nightmares mixed with residual magical energies and unknowingly brought to life by the strong emotions of a large group of people. So they're most commonly found in large cities that have a good number of mages, priests, and other spellcasters. So a Feyr, a great place that you might find Feyr if you're adventuring in the Forgotten Realms, might be a city like Waterdeep, or you might find it in Baldur's Gate, or some of the large metropolis. And perhaps after there had been some sort of traumatic event which caused a lot of the spellcasting defenders of the city to go out and cast a lot of spells. The people would be uneasy, they would be scared, and there would be a lot of residual magical energy in the air, and that would lend to the spontaneous creation of these Feyrs. And there's the normal Feyr and the greater Feyr. And the difference between them is that the normal Feyr is a 4-hit die monster, or a CR4 in 5e terms, versus a 16-hit die or a CR16 monster. And the normal Feyr only gets 1 attack for 1d4 damage because it has 1 mouth. The greater Feyr has 4 mouths, and with its 4 mouths it does 2d6 each. They're also, the greater Feyrs are also able to remain invisible. They can survive in sunlight, unlike the lesser Feyrs that they wind up getting destroyed by sunlight. And greater Feyrs can also have magical control over the emotions of people within a certain designated area when they use their supernatural ability. So the common Feyrs are created by the emotions of large masses of people, and greater Feyrs by the compilations of lesser Feyrs. The raw materials for such creatures may be found in any urban settlement, and when there is additional tension in the air, the Feyrs stalk at night. Cities under siege, towns divided by rivalries or civil wars, oppressed peoples, and settlements baking under a merciless summer heat are all possible breeding grounds for Feyrs. Guard and watch units are usually more than sufficient to handle the common Feyrs, as these Feyrs attack anything that moves. But the more dangerous great fears must be dealt with by a wizard or similar higher level individual who can both withstand the attack of the fear and dispatch it. Alright, so that is the fear. And then this comes from the 2nd edition Monstrous Manual. And then also out of the 2nd edition Monstrous Manual, it tells us that the ghost is a creature that it's an undead, yes, but it's a creature that can result from a death of someone who is so unusually emotional that they've been cursed with the gift of undead status. Now, it's the 2nd edition Monstrous Manual which specifically states this, but then that would lead us to understand that in 1st edition and 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, the ghost would also have these properties. So, they hate goodness and life, and they hunger to draw the living essences from the living. So they're lawful evil, they're solitary, armor class is 0, 10 hit dice, and their touch will age an opponent 10 to 40 years, or 1d4 times 10 years. Now, for an elf or something like that, 10 to 40 years, that's not so much. But for a human, wow, if you get aged 40 years, that's a pretty big deal. So, the ghosts are quite nasty creatures in 2nd edition. Alright, now in 3rd edition, we see our good old friend the Feyr again. However, notice they've changed the spelling of it. So, Fears instead of F-E-Y, what was it? It was F-E-Y-Rs. In 3rd edition, they are F-I-H-Y-Rs. So, very similar. The small aberration is the Feyr. The greater Feyr is the larger one. 4 hit dice, 16 hit dice. CR3 versus CR15, armor class 18 for both, 1 bite for the regular one at 1d4, and then 4 bites at 2d6, so very, very similar for the between the 2nd edition and 3rd edition version of these monsters. Alright, and then in 4th edition, we have a very strange creature indeed. This is one that I remember seeing in the original Monster Manual when I first got it way back in the 1980s and go, what in the heck is this? And I've never quite understood what the correct pronunciation of this is. I've always called it a Catoblepas, but I don't know whether that's the correct pronunciation or whether it should be called something else. So in 4th edition, there are several different types of Catoblepas, and the one we want to focus on is the Harbinger, because the Catoblepas Harbinger appears suddenly anywhere that hubris thickens the air. Its approach foretells impending death, famine, plague, or war, and sends prophets and seers into panicked frenzies. A Catoblepas Harbinger treads where the seeds of tragedy have been sown. It feeds on despair, pride, and anguish, growing larger on its journeys. This diet of vitriolic emotions causes the Harbinger to exhale noxious fumes, and creatures suffocate in its presence. So, yeah, it's a very, very very weird monster. I mean, it looks like a herd animal, but it's definitely bad news when these things show up. So, armor class 24, 220 hit points, an aura that spreads out 25 feet. Any creature within the aura that fails a death saving throw takes damage equal to half its bloodied value. For these, you have to roll death saves even if you are not dying. And if you fail that death save, you wind up losing a quarter of your full hit points. So it has a gore attack and a poison breath attack, a final glance, and its close burst 10, deals 5 necrotic damage, and the target is immobilized and gains vulnerable 5 to all damage. So anytime it's hit, it takes an additional 5 damage, is what vulnerable 5 means in 4E terms. Okay, and that's from the Monster Manual 3 from 4th edition. And also from 4th edition, we have the Slime Devil. And Slime Devils are vaguely humanoid shape amalgams of sludge and hate. They act as spies and interrogators for archdevils. They can engulf a creature and pull thoughts from its mind. Now they are born of loathing, intrigue, and anger. Use their talents to rip through the minds, or rip thoughts from the minds of their enemies. They're neither former angels nor immortal servants being punished for transgressions against their gods. So the Slime Devil is armor class 30, hit points 123, has a mercurial body, ignores difficult terrain, and does not provoke attacks of opportunity, has a caustic slam, deals 3d8 plus 11 damage, and then when it engulfs a creature, until the grab ends, the target is dazed and takes ongoing 10 acid damage. And then Scour the Mind deals psychic damage. Telepathically asks the target a question, and the target must answer the question truthfully or else take 3d8 plus 11 psychic damage. So yeah, that's the Slime Devil. Alright, and then we come to the star of tonight's show, the Screaming Devilkin. Okay, so the Screaming Devilkin is a small creature. It's a CR1 creature that has Sylvan as a language because it's Fey. Armor class 17, 18 hit points, and its only viable movement is by flight. Flies 40 feet per round. And it's an agile flyer, so opportunity attacks against the Screaming Devilkin have disadvantage while it's flying. And then it has this feature called Ceaseless Screaming. So any creature other than a Screaming Devilkin that starts its turn within 30 feet of one or more Screaming Devilkins and can hear it must make a DC 10 Wisdom save. On a failure, the creature is incapacitated until the start of its next turn. And on a success, creature suffers no effect. And then it has stunted legs. So it has disadvantage on attack rolls, and all attack rolls made against the Devilkin gain advantage while the Devilkin is not flying. And then its attack is with its tail. It's got this little barbed tail over here. And that's a melee plus 5 attack, reach 5 feet, and deals 1d4 plus 3 piercing damage. Even though it is a barbed tail, it does not have any poison, so you don't deal with any poison damage, just painful, piercing, barbed damage. Okay, so despite their diabolic appearance and name, they're denizens of the Feywild. And then a Screaming Devilkin sometimes arises when a creature in the Feywild is overcome with panic to the point that it screams, babbles, and otherwise loses control of its faculties. When such an event occurs, the creature's scream echoes through the Feywild. If it echoes at just the right angle between a rocky outcropping in the dead of night, the scream gains intensity and volume until it reaches a piercing crescendo. At that moment, the stone of the outcropping shatters as a small flock of Screaming Devilkins erupts from the earth and takes to the air. So, this is what I mean by creatures that just sort of spontaneously occur. All of these monsters that we've looked at tonight, going back to the Fihyr and the Ghost and the other Fihyr, the Catoblepas, and the Slime Devil, they all arise and they all are formed based on the strong emotions of people, either people who are caught in a situation, living people, or people who have died. Ghost obviously is the highly emotional death of one person. The slime devil is sort of the collected sludge and morass of hate and a lot of negative emotions from a lot of people who have died. So that is the particular property we're looking at this evening in our Monster Monday. So they are wicked tormentors. They love to spread fear and panic. And their horrid shrieking overwhelms the creature's senses, inspiring a combination of panic, sensory overload, and confusion, leaves creatures reeling. And the Devilkin steal treasures, weapons, and supplies, dooming an expedition to a slow death. The Devilkin fly near their victims, taunting them with the items they stole. Predators in the area learn that the Devilkin screeching is a sure sign easy prey draws near. And they will make opportunistic alliances. So a flock of Devilkins can appreciate vicious cruelty in other creatures. They see signs of an evil presence in the land, such as a cruel overlord or a vicious necromancer. They may offer an alliance if the villain offers plenty of opportunities for them to engage in wanton destruction and torment. These creatures serve as horrid mascots of a sort, capering about their new master and following orders to torment those who displease their leader with glee. So that is the Screaming Devilkin for you. And again, like we said, that's out of Mordenkainen's Fiendish Folio, Volume 1, is where you will find that monster. Alright, so now we're going to go back to the deck here, and we're going to talk about how we might use the Screaming Devilkin in our encounters. So let's think about how we might create a hard or challenging encounter with these creatures for a party of 5 PCs from a given level. And just like last week's monster, this is a CR1 monster. And so if you throw a single Screaming Devilkin at a level 1 party, that's going to be an easy encounter. If you want to make it a hard encounter, you can add 1 Darkling, which is another evil type of Fey creature. For a level 2 party, a single Screaming Devilkin is a trivial encounter, so add a second Screaming Devilkin to make it a hard encounter. And then for a level 3 party, it's also a trivial encounter, so if you have 1 Screaming Devilkin, add a red cap to the encounter. And again, that's another evil, the type of evil Fey, and that will make it a hard encounter. So now we want to take a look at what to do if you are an adventurer and you run into a flock of Screaming Devilkin. So what's some tactics you can use for fighting against them? Well, number 1, keep your wits about you. Ceaseless screaming of a flock of Screaming Devilkin inspires panic and fear in their victims. To avoid falling prey to this effect, keep a tight grip on your emotional state. And then, if you have any way of doing it, force them to land. They have stunted legs that make them easy targets and slow them considerably when they are not flying. So get them on the ground and they're much easier to hit. And then finally, last but not least, watch out for that tail. That barbed tail doesn't carry no poison, but it can hurt when it jabs you. And then if you're behind the screen, how might you use Screaming Devilkin? Well, there are several different ways you can use them. They would make a good jump scare monster. If you're a low-level party that is just venturing into the Feywild for the first time, it might be a great fun jump scare for a low-level party in the Desolate Wilderness or in the Bordered Feywild. So if some PCs fail their saving throws and panic, the Devilkin may steal some treasures or adventuring gear, weapons, etc., and then taunt the party with the stolen goods. And who knows where that will lead. Along with that, the Screaming Devilkin can be a convenient distraction. So evil predators or more powerful evil beings from the Feywild are drawn to the screams of these monsters because they know it means the Devilkin have found victims that might make a tasty meal or an easy target. So as a DM, you can distract the party with a flock of Screaming Devilkin before the real challenge of the encounter shows up to attack. Get the party focused on these Devilkin flying around and making noise. Also, all that screaming is going to make it much harder to hear any other creatures that are trying to stealthily approach and might be stalking the party. So they would have all kinds of disadvantage on perceiving the approach of other creatures. So evil minions. You can also use the Screaming Devilkin as evil minions. So it says these monsters might serve a much more powerful evil creature. Perhaps they steal treasures from the party. They will then try to take those treasures to the lair of a much nastier creature that the party will fight. So that's kind of a way of turning that jump scare into sort of the bait for a more intense encounter. So they come along, they scare the party, they grab some stuff, and they start running off, and the party begins running off after them. And oh, wow, right into a hag's lair. Oh, crap, now we gotta fight this hag, along with these stupid Screaming Devilkin. Something like that. Alright, so now, where would you place the Screaming Devilkin in your campaigns? So, these creatures could be found in the Feywild, or they might be found in an area that borders on a trod or a gateway into the Feywild. So the question you have to answer if you're going to put them there, why did they show up? Did something panic creatures on the other side of the gateway to cause this flock of Screaming Devilkin to appear, and then they came through that gateway into the natural world? And did that something, whatever panicked creatures on the other side, did that also come through into the natural world? And now that's a menace that the party has to deal with. So then another alternative is your party is adventuring in the Feywild and moving into a spookier, darker area of that strange realm. So the appearance of Screaming Devilkin might foreshadow much worse terrors to come. ... So it's kind of a way of changing the mood, because the Feywild is a weird place that, as you've seen when we talked about the wild beyond the witchlight, the Feywild reflects kind of a concentrated version of nature, but it also in a very strange way reflects and amplifies or distorts emotions. So you go into various areas of the Feywild where actually there is a manifestation of emotion in the flora and fauna around you. And you go to a place where there's a lot of happiness, and the trees and the flowers almost seem to be a little brighter, and the birds almost seem to be smiling. You go into a place that's filled with fear or panic or terror or despair, and everything is a little gloomier, and the trees might even seem to reach out and try to clutch at you as you go by to hinder your progress or something like that. So having some Screaming Devilkin show up as you are going into a darker area of the Feywild could be just sort of a nice way of signaling, yeah, you guys are in for a little bit of a different area than where you've been adventuring. Alright, and now let's talk about reskinning the monster, and what we're doing here is we're going to be talking about how you can use the concept of monsters that are spawned by very intense emotions. I was a little disappointed by my research this week. Like I said, I thought that looking for creatures spawned by strong emotions would bring up a lot more results than it actually did. But the flip side of that means that there's a lot more opportunities for us as DMs to imagine those kind of monsters ourselves. So let's put on our little imagination caps and think about that. So, how about monsters that are spawned by good emotions? So, monsters that are spawned by intense happiness, or intense pleasure, or intense joy. It's like, well, that seems like that might be boring. Not necessarily. What if those monsters that are spawned by intense happiness serve to maybe dull the senses and cause adventurers to drop their guard? Maybe it kind of imposes a supernatural sense of well-being and contentment over them, even though there's really not a good reason for them to feel that contentment or that happiness. And it just might serve to make it a little bit harder for them to realize that there's something big, bad, and nasty that is trying to creep up on them. So that's one thing you can think about is think about different kinds of monsters that might come up. Now, what would those monsters be like? They might be, it could be something silly like a singing flower monster, or a dancing bumblebee monster, or something like that. Just something that attracts the attention of the party and distracts them, and does something goofy and makes them oh, hey, yeah, this is cool, everything is really nice, and then that's when the earth below them erupts and something huge jumps out and bites them. Okay, so then what about, or what kind of monsters could we create that might be spawned by extreme emotions of jealousy, or greed, or envy, or hatred, or grief, or revulsion, or attraction, or suspicion? Now, the reason I put the suspicion on there is that when, a few months ago, it might have even been by this point, it might have even been in 2020, when we were doing our episode on Beholderkin, we were talking about the fact that one of the ways that beholders are created is from the paranoid delusions of other beholders. Beholders have such powerful minds and are gripped with such intense paranoia that they can start to dream about an enemy beholder that is going to come and attack them. And those very dreams and that very paranoia about an enemy beholder can spontaneously cause the beholder to divide and create that enemy beholder which it fears. And so that's a thing. So maybe like if you get in an area that's filled with a lot of mysterious deaths, and people are very suspicious of each other, and there's sort of a paranoia because of the government that's going around. The government is turning people in the city or the kingdom against each other or something like that. That paranoia might manifest itself in the spawning of some sort of monster. And it doesn't have to be a weak monster like the Devilkin. It might be something huge and powerful. I think a lot of times where I'm getting the impression of monsters that are already exist that might be created by these, there are a lot of monsters that are attracted by strong emotions, and they will draw those monsters to an area because they like to foment more of that. And so you have a lot of examples of like different demons and devils and other types of fiendish creatures that feed on that. You might draw some inspiration from some of those monsters that feed on emotions, and then say, okay, what would be a variant of this monster that's actually created by people experiencing these emotions, either one person or a group of people or a large area like a city, a metropolis-sized area of people experiencing a lot of this intense emotion. So those are some things to think about. All right. Now I'm going to take a look over here and see if we have any questions. It doesn't look like we have any questions right now. And again, tonight has been kind of a little bit of a shorter episode, which I always try to keep these episodes to under an hour, but sometimes you find such a lot of great information that it's hard to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on into the wrap-up. And if you guys have any questions about the Devilkin or about, how we might think about monsters that would be spontaneously generated from intense emotion, go ahead and throw those in the chat, and we'll talk about those in a couple of minutes. All right, well, I have been DM Gallibond, and this has been Monster Monday for November 22nd. Our topic, of course, has been the Screaming Devilkin and creatures that are spawned from intense emotions. I normally do 4 streams every week, but this week, tonight is the only stream you're going to get, because here in the United States, Thursday is Thanksgiving, and traditionally it's a weekend that a lot of people travel and a lot of families get together from all over the country, and so it's just disrupted not only the Thursday night game but the Saturday game and the Sunday game as well. So Monster Monday is the only regularly scheduled stream that I will be doing. I do have some time off this week, so probably during the day, Tuesday or Wednesday, I will be doing some other streaming, or you might find some other things being posted in various areas on my social media platforms or over on my Patreon. And my games that I normally run, Sunday afternoon game is a 5th edition Walker of Waterdeep. They have just entered the plane inspired by the Arabian Nights expansion from way back in the day. It was one of the earliest Magic the Gathering expansions. And mechanically, that expansion is based on the 2nd edition D&D Dark Sun setting. So there's a lot of enemies and even creatures and monsters and bad guys that have psionic abilities that are attacking the party. And they had their first encounter with a pack of basically wild dogs. It's like the Dark Sun version of hyenas that all have psionic attacks, including some of them that are really potent attacks. And it was quite a shock to the party how powerful those things were. So this ought to be a pretty fun plane for them to work through. All right, then Thursday night we have the Sword Coast Chronicles. It's our original 5e story being told through the lens of the published 5th edition campaigns. Right now they are in the storyline of Storm King's Thunder, and they are on the trail of King Hekaton, and they are fighting. They are right in the middle of a battle against one of the princes of elemental evil. They are fighting Yancy Bin. Because you see in my storyline, I'm sort of meshing all of the timelines of all of the published 5e campaigns, because In my story, there is one sort of master intelligence that the party has only gotten a few hints about. And this master intelligence is sort of sitting back there pulling the strings and causing all kinds of chaos to boil up, because that's going to help the this entity enact its plan. So that's on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then on Saturday nights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, we run a second edition game where we are playing in the Greyhawk setting using AD&D second edition rules. And the party right now are going through the Temple of Elemental Evil adventure. They have just gotten to the temple grounds, and they have fought in their way into and secured the tower that is on the grounds of the surface of the temple, and they're taking a bunch of prisoners, and they're trying to figure out what to do next. So you can join us on Sundays or Thursday evenings or Saturday nights and find out what's happening in those stories. Now, all of those are simulcast just like this on both the Twitch channel and on the YouTube channel. And all of the archives of all of the live streams are found on YouTube. All right. Now, next time on Monster Monday, we're going to be looking at an entity that has definitely been around a long time and has a lot of lore about it, and that entity is Zuggtmoy. Zuggtmoy, who is one of the demon princes from the, or demon princess, I should say, from the Abyss. She is like the big fungus monster person, yeah, if I recall. All right, so let me go take a look and see if we have any questions from chat. All right, don't see any. In that case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring the music up a little bit. And I'm going to go see if there's somebody that we can raid who may be doing some D&D. All right, everyone, everyone who's watching, if you are in the U.S. and if you see this before Thursday, the 25th of November, 2021, Happy Thanksgiving 2021. And for all you future people who are watching this in a future November, Happy Thanksgiving to you, whatever year it is when you're watching this. All right, so and then I will close, as always, by reminding you to watch out for the monsters under the bed. Good night, everybody. Alright, so in terms of other people who are streaming, let's go ahead and raid Grimolian. I'm gonna raid Grimolian and Alright, everyone. Take care. Have a great evening. And we will talk to you later. Good night, everybody.